The Battle of Stirling Bridge, fought on September 11, 1297, stands as one of the most remarkable and symbolic victories in Scottish history. A triumph that demonstrated the effectiveness of courage, tactical brilliance, and intimate knowledge of terrain over brute military strength. It was a decisive episode in the First War of Scottish Independence, which had erupted in response to the harsh rule imposed by King Edward I of England after his invasion and subjugation of Scotland in 1296. Following Edward's campaign, the Scottish king, John Balliol, had been forced to abdicate, and many of the Scottish nobles were either imprisoned or compelled to swear loyalty to Edward. Yet the spirit of resistance burned on, and across Scotland, small uprisings and acts of defiance broke out. Among those who emerged as leaders of the rebellion were two figures who would become legendary. William Wallace, a knight of lesser nobility whose origins remain partly shrouded in mystery, and Andrew Moray of Moray, a nobleman from the north who had already led successful revolts against English garrisons in the Highlands. By the summer of 1297, Wallace and Moray had united their forces, rallying thousands of Scots under the banner of national freedom. Their strategy relied not on open confrontation with England's superior military power, but on mobility, surprise, and the exploitation of Scotland's rugged landscape. Meanwhile, King Edward I of England, occupied with military operations in France, had entrusted the suppression of the Scottish rebellion to John de Warenne, the 6th Earl of Surrey, an aging noble who commanded a formidable army. With him was Hugh de Cressingham, the English treasurer in Scotland, whose cruelty and greed had made him particularly hated by the Scots. The English forces, numbering between 8,000 and 10,000 men, included heavy cavalry, longbowmen, and infantry well equipped and trained. In contrast, Wallace and Moray could muster perhaps between 2,000 and 4,000 men, mostly spearmen, light infantry, and a few archers, but with no significant cavalry. Despite their inferiority in equipment and numbers, the Scots had an advantage in morale, local support, and knowledge of the terrain. Stirling, situated near the River Forth, was a natural gateway between northern and southern Scotland. Whoever controlled the crossing at Stirling Bridge effectively controlled the passage to the north. The bridge itself was narrow, only wide enough for 2 horsemen to cross abreast, and this feature would prove decisive. Wallace and Moray took up a defensive position on the heights of Abbey Crag, overlooking the bridge and the surrounding flatlands. They observed as the English army, camped on the southern side of the river, began preparations to cross. The English command was divided on how to proceed. Some of Warenne's advisors, recognizing the danger of crossing such a restricted point in front of a hidden enemy, urged caution and proposed finding a ford or constructing a wider bridge. However, Cressingham, impatient and contemptuous of the Scots, reportedly mocked these suggestions, insisting that the rebels were untrained peasants who would flee at the sight of English knights. In the early morning hours of September 11th, the English began their crossing. The process was slow and chaotic, as soldiers and horses moved single file over the wooden structure. Wallace and Moray waited patiently, allowing a substantial number of English troops, probably around 2,000 men, including cavalry, to reach the north bank before giving the signal to attack. Then, with a shout, the Scottish schiltrons advanced. These dense formations of spearmen surged down from the high ground, striking with disciplined precision. The English troops on the north side of the river found themselves trapped between the Scots and the riverbank, unable to maneuver or retreat. As panic spread, the Scots drove them back toward the bridge, which soon became jammed with desperate men and horses. The weight and confusion caused parts of it to collapse, hurling soldiers into the water, where many drowned in their heavy armor. The slaughter was immense. The English vanguard was annihilated, and those who had not yet crossed could only watch helplessly from the southern shore. Among the fallen was Hugh de Cressingham, whose body was reportedly flayed after the battle, his skin cut into strips, a gruesome act symbolizing vengeance against English tyranny. When John de Warenne saw that his army was being destroyed piecemeal, he ordered a retreat, abandoning his baggage and supplies and fleeing south to Berwick. The victory was total. Thousands of English soldiers lay dead, while Scottish losses were minimal. The triumph at Stirling Bridge sent shockwaves across Britain and Europe, shattering the myth of English invincibility and demonstrating that disciplined infantry, fighting under inspired leadership, could defeat even the most powerful feudal armies. In the aftermath of the battle, Wallace and Moray became national heroes. However, Andrew Moray was mortally wounded during the fighting and died later that year, leaving Wallace as the sole guardian of Scotland, governing in the name of the absent King John Balliol. Wallace used his newfound authority to organize the defense of Scotland, leading raids into northern England and attempting to secure diplomatic recognition from European powers. For a brief moment, Scottish independence seemed restored. Yet King Edward I was not a man to accept defeat lightly. The following year, he personally led a massive army northward, culminating in the Battle of Falkirk in July 1298, where English longbowmen decimated Wallace's schiltrons and reversed the Scottish fortunes. Despite this later defeat, the Battle of Stirling Bridge remained a defining moment in Scotland's national story. It demonstrated how strategic genius and local knowledge could overcome overwhelming odds. It also symbolized the unity of ordinary Scots, peasants, townsmen, and minor nobles fighting together for a common cause. Wallace's victory became a beacon of hope, inspiring later generations in their struggle for independence. The site of the battle, near the modern city of Stirling, is today marked by the imposing Wallace Monument, a tribute to the man and the cause he embodied. The legacy of Stirling Bridge endures not only as a military triumph, but as a moral victory, a testament to the enduring power of courage and determination in the face of oppression.